Hello and welcome. You're watching UTV Live at 6.
Good evening. These are the headlines.
As the first report from the Post Office inquiry is published, a County Tyrone former postmistress tells UTV that her suffering has finally been recognised.
I mean, is this vindication?
It is. It actually is.
Yeah.
It's history.
UTV can reveal that senior doctors flagged serious concerns with the Belfast Trust leadership as far back as 18 months ago.
And warnings show that thousands of school children could be affected by holiday hunger this summer.
Also tonight, we meet the Carrickfergus grandmother, whose home cooking has become a social media hit.
And temperatures are set to climb as we head through this week, peaking at the weekend. I'll have all the details coming up later in the programme.
A former postmistress from County Tyrone has described an apology from the Post Office for the Horizon IT scandal as like a kick in the teeth. She was reacting following today's publication of the first report from the Post Office inquiry, which set out for the first time the scale of suffering caused by the faulty accounting system, which was developed by the software company Fujitsu.
Hundreds of postmistresses and postmasters were wrongly accused of theft and fraud, which drove some of them to take their own lives. Our correspondent Gareth Wilkinson has more.
The Post Office scandal wrecked lives, the innocent criminalised, and today the full human cost of the UK's biggest miscarriage of justice was laid bare. The chairman of the Post Office inquiry said what he's uncovered is disturbing.
Many people have inevitably suffered emotional turmoil and significant stress in consequence. Many businesses and homes have been lost. Bankruptcies have occurred. Marriage and families have been wrecked.
In Tyrone, Deirdre Conley was watching closely. Sir Wynne Williams there talked about the anguish that victims and their families were put through.
Yeah.
Is that something that you recognise?
Oh yeah. Myself, taken bankrupt, losing a business, epilepsy, the stress that the whole family were under.
Deirdre ran a post office in the village of Killeter, but was wrongly accused of stealing and forced to pay back thousands. Sir Wynne Williams says post office bosses knew or should have known the Horizon accounting system could make errors. But he said the post office maintained the fiction that its data was always accurate. Because you actually are named in the final report, Deirdre Conley. This is your case. Yeah. I mean, is this vindication?
It is. It actually is. It shows that the highest judge in the court believes my story.
The computer system Post Office spent an arm and a leg on is faulty.
The inquiry had already begun when the ITV drama Mr. Bates versus the Post Office brought the plight of those affected to the attention of millions.
I don't know where it's gone.
But the real life suffering was even worse than what was depicted on screen. Of the hundreds of sub-postmasters falsely accused, 59 told the inquiry they'd contemplated suicide. It may have driven 13 to take their own lives. A level of despair recognised by Fiona Elliott and Maureen McKelvey, two former postmistresses from Northern Ireland, in London today as the report's findings were delivered.
We're very lucky that we're standing here today. After all we've been through, we're one of the lucky ones.
But there is anger over compensation. Delays are described in the report as unjustifiable, and the wait for many of those who lost nearly everything continues.
Are they wanting us all to be in a
disappear
box, in our graves before they decide to give us anything?
The government has been asked to act on recommendations. This is just part one of what will be two final reports made public today at the Oval Cricket Grounds, but it's in the criminal courts where many victims hope this scandal will end. Gareth Wilkinson, UTV Live.
Revelations by UTV of a toxic culture within the Belfast Trust triggered unprecedented action by the Department of Health and led to the removal of the Trust chairman. Tonight we bring you more shocking claims raised 18 months ago by senior doctors who said that the culture was so poor that some medics had been left feeling suicidal. Together, the group of medics also alleged that some doctors who raised whistleblowing concerns found themselves subjected to internal disciplinary processes. The claims were made in a letter from the doctors to the recently removed chairman of the Trust, Kieran Mulgrew. Well, our health reporter, Deborah McAleese, joins us now. Deborah, what more can you tell us about this letter, which was sent 18 months ago?
Well, Rose, Mike Nesbitt said himself that he wanted to find out if that poor culture that was uncovered in the cardiac surgery unit was more widespread across the Trust, and this letter suggests that yes, it was. So the letter, it details a meeting of a large group of senior doctors from across the Trust who met in January 2024 to raise serious concerns with the former board chairman, Kieran Mulgrew. And I understand that a representative from Human Resources from the Belfast Trust was also in attendance at that meeting. Now, during the meeting, some consultants ended up in tears, telling their experiences and the perceived treatment by management. The letter says that some were so traumatised by the internal disciplinary process that they were left with suicidal thoughts. And others, it had a serious impact on their mental health and their well-being. And as you said, the concerns over the disciplinary process was used that in response to doctors raising whistleblowing concerns around patient safety. Now, the letter and Mr Mulgrew's response to the Trust appears to be shared with some members of Trust management at the time. Now, I know the letter is from 2024, but several of the doctors who I've been speaking to don't believe the proper action was taken by leadership at the time, and some of the concerns raised remain.
OK, so last week, Kieran Mulgrew was removed from his position. Are all the staff happy about that?
Well, look, the Health Minister was under a lot of pressure to act given all of the issues across the Belfast Trust, and he said that it was time for a fresh start. Now, some staff members I've been speaking to said that, yes, they believe a new chair will bring that fresh start, but others have said that Mr Mulgrew was actually extremely supportive of their concerns and that they don't believe that he should have been the one to go. And in fact, I'm aware that several messages of support have been sent to Mr Mulgrew, but of course then others do believe that he should have gone. So there's a clear split in opinion there.
OK, and in brief, the Trust and the Department of Health, any reaction?
Belfast Trust said it supports all staff who wish to tell of their experiences and that it's continuing to work diligently to ensure improvements are made across the organisation. The Department of Health said that it will continue to provide support for the Trust. But whoever takes over from Kieran Mulgrew and the new Chief Executive who will come in September will have a lot of work to do rebuilding confidence and relations within the Belfast Trust.
Big serious story. Thank you very much, Deborah.
There were emotional scenes outside Belfast Crown Court this morning after a man was sentenced to 8 years in prison for the manslaughter of his friend in Portrush 3 years ago.
The victim's daughter broke down as she spoke about the impact that his death has had on her family. Barbara McCann was in court.
46-year-old Paul Rowlands was a much-loved father of 5, but he had been living rough in Portrush at the time of his death. His battered body was found in the seaside town a month after he had arrived in Northern Ireland. Belfast Crown Court heard that the man who admitted attacking him, 42-year-old Jason Murray, who was also originally from England, had left him to die in a car park. The court was told that they were friends and homeless, living in tents on the East Strand beach, spending their days drinking, fishing and taking drugs. Murray's manslaughter plea was accepted on the grounds of diminished responsibility due to mental abnormality. Outside the court, Mr Rowland's daughter broke down as she spoke of her loving, fun father.
Dad was at the heart of our big family. He was a brother, father, son, uncle and grandfather. He was loved by us all more than I can say. He was a loving son to his mum, dad, Tony and June.
Mr Rowland's sister took over reading the statement on behalf of their family.
And in turn, he was a brilliant dad to me and my 4 younger siblings, Lucy, Ria, Laura and Ryan. Dad was our rock, and his cruel and untimely death has turned our world upside down. Our lives will never be the same again.
The defendant was led from the dock in handcuffs and returned to custody. He was given an indeterminate custodial sentence, which means he must serve at least 8 years before even being considered for release. The judge said the case was a reminder of what happens to people when they lose their lives to drink and drugs. Barbara McCann, UTV Live, Belfast Crown Court.
Northern Ireland Electricity has warned of a potential disruption to supply in South Belfast because of a bonfire in the Donegal Road area.
The Belfast Trust says that it has been made aware of concerns about a potential outage and that senior engineers will be at the City Hospital site on the 11th night. Paul Riley reports.
This is the bonfire giving NIE concerns. It's positioned close to an electricity substation off the Donegal Road in South Belfast. I've been speaking to residents who live close to this substation. One woman told me that this is a new bonfire and that she's glad people are finally listening to their concerns. They say they've been reassured by the fire service there will be 2 appliances close to the site on the 11th night, but ultimately people here say they're feeling powerless. NIE says mitigations have been put in place, including turning off nearby transformers, but this comes with a warning that supply could be compromised. The Belfast Trust says it's raised the matter with NIE and that engineers will be on site at the City Hospital on the 11th night. According to a Trust spokesperson, work is underway to avoid any impact on patients. Health Minister Mike Nesbitt visited the bonfire this morning. He didn't speak to the media. There were already concerns around this site because of suspected asbestos in the grounds. UTV approached all the main political parties for interviews today. Only the SDLP were available.
There'll be bonfires in South Belfast, there'll be bonfires across Northern Ireland. For people who enjoy them, I want them to happen within the rules, safely and securely and respectfully of their neighbours without burning things like posters, etc. But this is clearly not going to be safe. If it's right next to an electricity substation, there's concerns about security of supply, but particularly it's next to asbestos, which is a highly carcinogenic substance. Frankly, it's a bit absurd to me that I, as a public representative, have to stand here and say that we should not be having a situation in which a massive bonfire is going to happen next to loose asbestos.
The Environment Agency says it's been working with the City Council and that additional steps have been taken over the past week to cover the asbestos, including using fire retardant materials. The agency also said an investigation into the site is ongoing. Paul Riley, UTV Live, South Belfast.
Public Prosecution Service says it will not appeal the sentence given to 2 people who were jailed for their role in the Mabo dump, one of the largest illegal waste sites in Europe. Last month, 67-year-old Paul Doherty from Culmore Road in Londonderry was sentenced to 1 year in prison, whilst 56-year-old Gerard Farmer from Westlake in Derry was jailed for 21 months. In a letter to local MLA Mark H. Durkin, who argued that the sentences were unduly lenient, the PPS said that there was no proper legal basis for appeal.
Tributes have been paid to the Conservative former Cabinet Minister Norman Tebbit, who has died at the age of 94. He suffered serious injuries in the 1984 IRA bombing of the Grand Hotel in Brighton, which left his wife Margaret paralysed from the neck down. The Conservative grandee was one of Margaret Thatcher's closest political allies, and he played a key role in the Tory politics for a generation.
The Children's Commissioners for the UK's 4 nations have called on the government to act with urgency to address child poverty.
A school in North Belfast has highlighted the stark reality which many families face during the summer, when absence of school meals can make feeding their children a daily struggle. Katie Andrews reports.
An empty classroom can mean an empty plate. For some families, summer is a time of joy and freedom, but for others, it's a time of worry.
I had a parent come to me and say, the summer months are the hardest. They dread them, and they should really look forward to them, because what it brings with it is families that have to absorb the costs of those free school meals. We would call to some doors and we would bring food and we would make some discretionary payments to parents.
There are around 400 pupils at Holy Cross Boys School. 70% of them rely on free school meals. The situation has led to renewed calls for the Education Minister to bring back support.
If we could have some sort of scheme like we had during COVID, that these families could be given these payments to help. If I could ask the the Minister to, when he's sitting at his breakfast and reflecting on how his year went and looking forward to his summer holidays, there's going to be children who are going to be at home and not have any meals.
In response, the Department of Education said from April 2023 executive funding ended and therefore school holiday food grants could no longer be made. It added the department will look at ways to tackle holiday hunger as part of any wider approach by the executive to tackle food poverty.
According to the Trussell Trust, between June to August last year, over 6,000 children turned to food banks to avoid going hungry. Volunteers fear this summer could be the most challenging they've ever faced.
I foresee this to be one of the worst summers that we've experienced. That's coming from conversations with schools. Schools telling us that they're putting lists together of families that they believe are going to struggle this summer.
The anti-poverty strategy released in June has drawn strong criticism, with groups last week urging its withdrawal, saying families deserve better.
We've seen an anti-poverty strategy that looks like a tick box. Where is holiday hunger? Where is the testimony from people with lived experience of poverty as well? They should be at the forefront and be voices for what's going on. We're hearing what's going on. You just need to stand here to listen to personal testimony from families.
As need continues to rise, volunteers are preparing to work tirelessly this summer to make sure no child goes hungry. Katie Andrews, UTV Live, Belfast.
In a statement, the Department for Communities told UTV that the draft anti-poverty strategy was the culmination of hard work. The Minister had listened carefully to the recommendations. It also said that the strategy was out for public consultation and it was encouraging anyone with an interest to make their views known.
Time now on the programme to look at the headlines making tonight's ITV News at 6:30.
And here's Mary Nightingale.
Coming up on the programme, the inquiry into the Horizon IT scandal slams the Post Office and the government, saying their position on compensation for those affected was indefensible. Doctors vote to go on strike in England. The BMA warns the walkouts could last until January. A hosepipe ban for Yorkshire Water customers after the region sees months of extremely hot and dry weather. And we are in Switzerland ahead of the crucial Euros match between England and Wales. Would you join me for those stories and more at 6:30?
Now, this time next week, the world's best golfers will be in Portrush preparing for the final major of the year.
The Open Championship returns to the North Coast for the first time since 2019, and our sports correspondent Ruth Gorman has been finding out about the outstandingly beautiful links course at Royal Portrush.
We're here on the first tee box at Royal Portrush. I'm delighted to say I'm joined by one of the main caddies here, Gary Stevenson. We're on the first, the grandstands are up, it's looking amazing, as it always does up here. But this hole is famous from the last Open because Rory McIlroy took an 8. He was out of bounds. That must come up all the time when you're caddying.
It does indeed. It comes up a lot. Like I would say to the golfers, as long as you beat an 8, you've beaten Rory.
You can show us how it's done.
Okay.
Good shot.
Cheers.
Well, we've made it out to the fourth hole, which is named after Fred Daly, who of course won the Open back in 1947. And Fred was the first winner from Northern Ireland to win the Open. And he was from Portrush, wasn't he, Gary?
Born and bred in Portrush.
On the other side of the course, former champion Fred Daly shows he's still among the best in Britain.
I actually did a bit of caddying as a youngster.
Wow. Well, they've made this hole harder since 2019. What have they done?
They've actually lengthened it by 30 yards. So it's now over 500 yards long.
And you have a family link to Fred Daly?
I have indeed, yes. My grandfather was great friends with Fred, and my grandfather was a well-renowned club maker, and he actually made Fred's driver when he won the Open in 1947.
Wow. I hope you got him to make you a driver.
I did indeed, yes.
Well, your grandfather has a hole named after him as well, so we're going to go out and see that now, aren't we?
That's correct, yes, so let's go.
Great, thank you. Tell us about the Stevenson history here at Royal Portrush.
Well, my grandfather, P.G. Stevenson, he was the head professional here and was actually attached to the club for over 50 years. During the 1930s, he helped design this particular hole, and the club have kindly named it after him.
And your father also worked here?
My father, Di Stevenson, he took over from my grandfather in 1977. In 1951, my grandfather actually played in the Open. And my father actually worked. His job was to collect the cards after the fellas had signed their cards in the 18th green and take them to the secretary.
So it was only right that you started to work here as well?
I've been caddying now for 25 years. And I was lucky enough to actually caddy in the Open the last time it was held here for a young Japanese amateur. And to cut a long story short, he bogeyed the last to miss the cut by 1, which is annoying.
Well, we're now out at the 9th hole, which has had a change, not in structure, but in name.
It has indeed, Ruth. The club have decided to call this after Darren Clark, who, as you know, won the Open in 2011. And he's been a great ambassador for the club and also golf in Ireland.
So we've made it to the 18th green, the leaderboard, of course. That's what everyone wants their name to be on the top of come the end of the week. And Gary, this is my chance to
Win the Open, Ruth.
win the Open.
So
Okay, no pressure.
No pressure, come on, you can do it.
Right, what's my read here?
More or
Straight at
less,
it?
straight at it, Ruth.
Okay. Here we go.
Just like that. Well done.
Well done, Ruth. A County Antrim grandmother has become a social media star, all thanks to her recipes, which she's now sharing from her kitchen in Carrickfergus.
Her videos are earning global recognition as she aims to keep traditional cooking alive. Our reporter Nathan Hanna paid her a visit.
This will be the best recipe you ever follow on TikTok.
This is traditional food heaven, and it's straight from the kitchen of a County Antrim grandmother.
We are having a blast together. I started last year, and look how quickly we have grown, and we can just keep growing if you keep sharing me with your friends, and I keep providing you with the recipes and the things you want.
58-year-old Cheryl Smith is enjoying a huge taste of success. The TikTok account she set up in 2024 has earned more than 3 million likes. And it's not something she expected.
I started the TikTok in the first place because I've got adult children who like recipes. They've moved on from home and they're married, and I've done it as a living cookbook for them, and it caught on.
Her bite-sized videos have been watched globally. Cheryl focuses on traditional food, helping to teach a new generation how to cook and bake on a budget, all while feeding her family.
I'm getting so many comments from the younger generation who are coming to me and saying that I'm the mum, granny, auntie that they never had.
So Cheryl, this is where we see you standing here right in the heart of your kitchen making all your brilliant food on TikTok.
I stand usually in the same place because I have my little stand set up with my camera on it, and I will do my cooking. Today I'm going to be making a soda bread. I'm going to marry the soda farls from the north with the bacon and cabbage from the south, and I'm making a bacon and cabbage soda bread.
And it's this down-to-earth, relatable style which is bringing Cheryl's recipes into kitchens around the world.
Over here in Northern Ireland, we are really good. We have a humour and a palate second to none. And I think we can marry the two together. I like showing really good food and doing it in a fun way.
Nathan Hanna, UTV Live.
I'm hungry just watching that. The weather's next.
Here's Aisling.
Bringing the warm sunshine outside, inside. UTV Weather. Sponsored by the Grant Arona R290 heat pump.
Hello there, good evening to everyone at home. Well, as we've head through the next few days, temperatures are set to climb. Still quite cloudy out there and staying cloudy through tonight, but it is warming up. We're going to see some sunshine breaking through as well, and it'll be a little bit warm overnight, but that's mainly as we head towards the weekend, towards the peak of this hot spell of weather that's on the way. Over the next few hours though, the cloud thickening and lowering again, and that just may produce a little bit of drizzle, some low cloud over the hills as well. So a murky start to Wednesday morning, temperatures dropping back to around 13 degrees Celsius. Now there is going to be plenty of cloud around through Wednesday morning, but very quickly that will start to lift. It'll break up, the sunshine will break through. So initially perhaps the odd spot of rain, but overall it's going to be a dry day once everyone's up, out and about. Temperatures easily getting up to around 22 degrees Celsius and plenty of sunshine developing as well by the afternoon, and that means some late sunshine as we head through Wednesday evening. Across the rest of Ireland, a little bit of a cloudy start here as well, very similar weather, but maximum temperatures getting up to 24 degrees Celsius, so certainly above average for the time of year. But let's just take a look at the bigger picture as we head from Wednesday into Thursday to see what's going on. Weather fronts to the northwest of us, but it's this high pressure here. It's nudging its way all the while northward, so perhaps a little bit cloudy at times on Thursday, but as we head into Friday, these weather fronts will continue to push away to the north. That high pressure takes charge of the weather. So let's just take a look at the details detail of the temperatures. As we head into Thursday, at times a little bit cloudy, particularly through the morning, maximum temperatures of around 23 degrees Celsius. By Friday, lots of sunshine around and that day-on-day heating starts. So by Saturday, maximum temperatures getting up to 28 degrees.
UTV weather, sponsored by the Grande Rona R290 heat pump.
Making the most of summer. Perry sponsors UTV pollen count.
Well, we're now moving into the second peak of the grass pollen season. The pollen count will be high for the next few days, very high by Friday as that heat starts to build. The main source of pollen is grass pollen.
And that's the very latest this Tuesday, the 8th of July. Paul will be back with our late bulletin at 10:30.
The ITV News continues with Mary Nightingale. From Rose, from me and the rest of the Tea Time team, good evening.
Good evening.